to take up any time.
Yeah,
Everything is the light is shining, on my men. We're gonna have a great conversation. I'm super excited about this one, not only because we having a conversation of something that we've never talked about before, but just the information. You know us, we're big on giving value, and so this is gonna be a valuable episode. So I'm excited.
100%. Yeah, we're both super excited about our second guest on Wealth Wednesday. And a little bit about our guest today. He specializes in leveraging your credit to build or buy businesses. All right. This brother has found a lot of success with real estate, with e commerce, and a couple different businesses out there. And especially with leveraging, again, your credit to get into different business, right? And we hear about it all the time. Like there's the credit gurus out there and the people saying like, yo, I can get you $100,000 in credit. But like we never. My question is like, what do we do with that credit? What do we do with that information, those resources, right? So the brother that we have on today, we're going to talk about those things. Some of you probably didn't even know you can get that much capital off of credit and whatnot. So we're going to dive into that as well. Welcome to the podcast, Toby Rosario. How are you doing today, bro?
I'm feeling blessed, man. First, I just want to thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to get on your platform. Really love what you guys are doing. And hopefully I can provide some sort of value where a listener or whoever listens to this is able to take action and maybe do something with their life or maybe progress in their life as well.
100%. That's something that we're big on here is action. That's the key word that you
Right.
just said. So taking those action steps, we give a lot of great advice in this podcast, but the key word again is action. So with that being said, man, if you can give us kind of a rundown, I know I gave like some of your like what you do, but talk to us about who you are as a man. Where are you from, man? What's your background? Let the people know a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'll give you the condensed version. So a little bit about myself. Back in I would say 2019, right before COVID, I worked corporate America, but I've always done like entrepreneurial things on the side. But then I learned about credit. I learned about how powerful and how it can be leveraged to really propel you to the next level, right? So back in 2020, like right as COVID hit, me and my wife were like, you know what, we're kind of done with this corporate life, and she said we should buy a business. And this was when everything was like hectic. We didn't know what was going on. Businesses were closing down, and she's like, I think we should do it. This is a good opportunity. Whenever there's fear in the street, there's always an opportunity.
Mm.
So long story short, we were looking for businesses, and then towards the follow, it took us about a year to really find an opportunity that really benefited us. It was right here in Virginia. I'm originally from New Jersey. Then I moved to Philadelphia with my wife now, and then we saw an opportunity right here in Virginia for a restaurant that was really, what's the word, was a restaurant that was outdated, right? They didn't have online delivery, they didn't have delivery. It was very old. It's been there for 30 years, which is always a good sign in business, right? You want something that's has been established for at least 5 years or more. It was generating great revenue. Anyway, long story short, we saw an opportunity. We made an offer on it. We found out that we can basically co-sign, borrow some money based on our credit. We put a down payment on that property. We sell a finance the rest. We been owning that for about 2 years now. And in the midst of all that, since I've learned the credit game, I've invested into multifamily, some e-commerce stuff, and some other businesses along the way. I know that was a long-winded answer, but essentially, like you said in the beginning, I learned how to leverage my credit to buy income and create cash flow through that process.
Look, we're only like 5 minutes in, and you just dropped like a couple different bars. I don't know if people picking these up, but the first one you said was your wife. Shout out to your wife for having that insight and that intelligence to know, like, yo, when there is fear, when there's hectic, when things are going crazy, there's opportunity there, right? So I love that she had that mindset. You guys went in together to like, okay, let's find the right opportunity. You said it took you about a year to make sure that
Right.
you find the right one. You didn't just jump on something just because. And then the second thing you brought up was you found a restaurant that was cash flowing but you also seen that there was opportunities for it to be improved upon, which I think is critical as well, right? I mean, I'm sure we're going to get into like how to even buy a business, but if you don't know how you can improve it, that's probably not going to be the best scenario for you. But you immediately, you probably looked at the outside, the inside, maybe the technology wasn't up to date, things of that nature you could improve upon and increase the cash flow.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing with investing, right? When you're looking to buy a property, you always want to look at it, where can I add value, right? So it was the same thing with the restaurant. Where can I add value? And the value was it was very outdated. I had a lot of inefficiencies in the restaurant, and they didn't have online ordering. So that was a big thing. I mean, just by that, we almost doubled the revenue just by adding that, because it's a small town. So if you add online delivery, you can expand your reach. Instead of having people come to you, you can just have the food delivered to them. So it was just a good opportunity. It was win-win for us and the seller. So we just felt like we can add value, and it turned out good.
And I'm curious, and Jeremiah, you can hop in after. What made you guys go with the restaurant? Because I know typically in business, the restaurant industry can be very, very tough, right? And I think for you, you guys looked at the numbers, you looked at the opportunity, and you've seen there was potential there. But why even a restaurant?
Yeah, great question. So you're right. Restaurants generally are very high risk, but the first indicator of success was it's been there 30 years, right? The second thing was, again, I know I'm repeating the same thing, right? We felt that we can add value by adding delivery. If it was making X amount of money already, the way it was already structured for the last 30 years, I believe if we can add this, it can increase revenue 10 to 20%, right? And that's a big jump in the restaurant industry. Another thing, it was in a great location. It's in a great location because there's always traffic in there. So those are kind of the three things that really caught my attention. It was been there for 30 years. We felt like we can add value. It's in a great location. And it was well managed. They already had a manager in place, so that's been there 30 years. So that's a good thing. It had a good structure internally as far as the employees and how everything was going. Although it couldn't be improved, it still had good structure internally.
In that situation, do you kind of, you see the good employees, good system, 30 years, good traffic. You look at that and you kind of wonder, like, why are they even selling this? Why are they selling this restaurant?
Right.
Up to you guys questions.
Yeah, I mean, that's the first thing. When anybody's selling, you always want to know, why are you selling? If it's that good, why are you selling? Even with a property, if it's that good, why are you selling it then? The guy was 72 years old. So he just wanted to retire. I mean, he was fed up with it. He was really not. I mean, he was tired of it. He was 72-year-old. He had to keep waking up 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning, get out at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning. He lost the energy. He lost the drive. So that's always a good indicator. One mistake I will say, though, and not to sound like, in hindsight, right? Hindsight is 2020. He was very willing to offer a better discount. Had I been more aggressive with my offer, I think I would have gotten a better deal. Because this was like 2021, so a year after COVID, and he was trying to get rid of it. I should have been a little bit more aggressive with my offer to get a better deal on my end, because he was willing to sell. He was willing to sell at a discount because he just wanted to get rid of it. He was just over it. So to answer your question, first thing you should ask whenever someone's selling, whatever they're selling, why are you selling it? If it's so good, why are you selling it? And then you can uncover and make a decision based on that.
And could you run by I think you ran by the numbers at the beginning, but could you, like, for that restaurant, can you run by the numbers again? And after that, were you guys acting in the restaurant? Like, I'm sure there's people thinking out there like, okay, that'd be dope to buy a restaurant, but I got to be there washing dishes and whatnot. What was your guys' experience with that?
Yeah. So as far as the numbers go, so full transparency. So he wanted 240. We offered, I believe, once 180. He countered at 216, and then we accepted it. But again, in hindsight, he probably would have, if we would have stand firm at the 180, he would have taken it. I mean, he was desperate, and he already made his money. He's already been killing it for the last 30 years. So it wasn't like it wouldn't have made a difference. Anyway, 216, we put 100,000 down. When we got in there, yes, we had to work a lot because I've never run a restaurant before. So you want to go into a business and you want to know, you want to be able to do everything, right? You want to know all the ins and outs. Where can things be fixed? How can we make this better? So the first couple months, I mean, we were working 7 days a week, 16 hours a day. Like I would be the first one there and the last one to leave, like 9 to 9, 9 to 10 every day, or 9 to 11 every day for like a couple months, just so we could understand the business, how it all works. Now the downside with that in today's economic climate, it's hard to find good work. So that's one of the cons that we've been dealing with, right? I don't know how they pay their bills, but nobody wants to work. So we've been having a hard time finding another chef. So we've had chefs, but they don't last long because they always quit, or they don't come to work, or they always come late. I mean, it got so bad we had to accept chefs coming like an hour, 2 hours late because there was no one else. It was hard to replace that chef. We would have to wait another 2 months to go to the interview process and hire someone else. So there's pros and cons with anything. So that's one of the biggest cons, though, that it's hard to find good work now. So that's something we are struggling with as far as employees. We're having a hard time keeping and retaining a chef in the business. So I'm the chef, and then we have another chef.
And what type of restaurant is it?
It's a pizza restaurant. Yeah.
Jeremiah, do you have anything before I transition a little bit?
Go ahead, man. You're doing your thing. I'll get to the thing. I got a ton of stuff, but it'll have to probably be another episode.
No, you good.
So it's all good.
Okay, so I guess my other question is, obviously you can't anticipate everything, and for y'all listening, we're gonna get into how, the specific nitty gritty right now. I'm just super curious about the restaurant business. Obviously going into it, you didn't know like all the pros and cons to running it. Was this one of the things that you guys knew, like, hey, there might be a chance that, employees and chefs and whatnot, it might be kind of hard to come by? Is that something you guys thought about?
Yeah. So when we initially first bought it, we really wanted to buy a business. So we were really desperate buyers too. So one of the selling points from the seller was that they already had a chef in place. But the problem with that, like, we didn't want to also overwork the chef because the owner, the previous owner, was a chef himself. So it was him and the other chef. So whoever purchased the restaurant would have to either hire another chef, like we tried to do, or you have to become the chef as the owner, because we don't want to overwork the current chef. So we want to give him breaks. We want to help him with the lunch rushes or dinner rushes. So as we got in there, we realized, oh man, it's going to be tough because we're having a hard time finding another chef to replace us. We're going to have to be the ones that are going to be in here cooking and, putting the pizzas in the oven, doing the sandwiches, et cetera, et cetera. So that is one of the cons that we realized as soon as we got it. Once we found out we couldn't really retain good chefs, we felt, we were a little disappointed in that sense that now we have to be owner operator,
100%. So for the folks out there that are listening and maybe they're interested, maybe this conversation or have piqued their interest about buying a business, but maybe not necessarily a restaurant. What other businesses out there for the people I don't know that can they purchase, and where do they even begin or start?
Right. Great question. So I'm actually looking to buy another business and get out of the restaurant business. And I can explain why if you want me to. But a good business to get into is something like a service-based business, like plumbing, HVAC, businesses like that. Those are good businesses that have high margins. They usually have a big internal structure where they have good employees. And where you can find these businesses is a website like bizbuysell.com.
Bizbuysell.com.
Yep, that's a gem. You go to bizbuysell.com. You can actually filter, hey, I want a business that makes a minimum cash flow of 6 figures or whatever the case is. And another thing that you can do that I just found out that I'm actually looking into, you can buy a business anywhere between, I forget what the minimum is, but up to $5 million with SBA loans, and you only have to put 10% down. So if a business is generating is $5 million, is generating a lot of revenue, which typically means a lot of net profit. So that's another thing that you can do. But typically that's where you would go, and then you can call business brokers in the area, and those business brokers can help you find a business as well if it's not listed on that website, bizbuysell.com.
That's pretty crazy because I'm looking at it right now, and it kind of shows like how much it would cost to buy the business, but also shows the cash flow.
Right, exactly. So that's how you can filter it. Hey, I only want businesses that makes X amount of cash flow, six figures, 200, 300, whatever the case is. You can filter it. It even tells you like, okay, the seller. This is another thing that more sellers are willing to do if you ask, even if the listing, see, our listing didn't say seller financing. So seller financing is, let's say, Chris, you're selling a business, you become the bank. So we seller finance 116,000 off my restaurant, right? At 4% interest. That's a whole lot better than going to the bank and financing at 8, 10, 12%, whatever the case is. So he gets a promissory, we sign a promissory note, he gets a monthly payment until that term is over. So when you buy a business, you could always ask, is the seller willing to do seller financing? We can give him a certain down payment, whatever he's comfortable with, and we can finance the rest at a certain interest rate. All you got to do is sign a promissory note.
And how do you determine the interest rate?
That's usually between you and the seller. So it can be whatever you want.
Yeah, that's dope.
We actually told the seller, we'll give you the 216, but no interest. And he was kind of going back and forth. And his business broker told him, just do 4%, because that's kind of like the standard average, which it was like 2-3 years ago. But it's really negotiable, basically. Like whatever you and the seller can negotiate, it can be 3%, 4%, 5%, whatever the case is. But it's usually a lot better than going to a bank, because the interest rates usually are 8, 10, 12%.
Well, and so you were going to mention the reason why you're getting out of the restaurant industry. I mean, you kind of mentioned it, but go ahead and let us know, and maybe what
Hey
industry
Chris,
you're working.
before we do that, I kind of want to stay on that for a second.
Go
On
ahead.
that particular piece, it's funny because a lot of people, strangely, right, like myself, I would never invest in a restaurant. It's just, it doesn't interest me. Whatever. But I also like that you mentioned that. I was actually, and I'm giving personal experience of like people like, oh, well, this guy, no, like seriously, I was just on there and actually had a meeting last week about purchasing a book of business for an insurance that the guy was like, hey, I'm moving to this state. I want to sell my book. I'm selling my whole agency. And so it's funny he said that, because I'm like, yo, Toby's really on it, because like I just literally had a meeting last week based off stuff that I'm finding there and being able to like shrink down, because people will be like, oh, I don't want to do a restaurant. Okay, well, I'm in the financial space and I went and found an insurance agency that was selling their whole book of business. Maybe you want to, I don't know, sportswear, whatever it is, whatever, meets your thought or your fancy, your desire to do that. I think that people should definitely invest and think about that in this space. I'm just saying that because it's important to be entrepreneurial in this climate, in this financial climate. I want to drop that, but go ahead, do your thing.
Yeah, to add to that, yeah, like you said, there's all kinds of businesses that you might not even think. I mean, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but it's like you could own a CPA business.
Yeah.
You could buy a what are they called? The medical places. You could buy any business you could think of.
I'm
You
looking
could
at it,
buy it.
not to cut you off. I'm looking at it right now. They're selling like pool routes, like
Yeah.
the routes.
Yep. Those are good too. Yep.
That's crazy.
Yeah, they got FedEx routes. They got any kind of business that can be sold. You can find it on. You can even put it like, if you, like you said, finances. You can put in the keyword to search that specific keyword. Anything that is associated with that keyword, it'll show up. So it's a pretty cool. I spent hours on there just looking at businesses to see what's a good opportunity out there.
Not owner finance is the
Yeah,
gym, because that's
yeah,
definitely what we were looking at. I mean, they were asking like I think 450, and I said, look, I'm gonna give you two. and then you going, we'll do 2.5, and they're like, yeah, and I'm like, your book of business is equaling what? And then we looked at revenue, profit margin. I'm like, yeah, so this is where where that
Right.
levels out between the two. But no, that's a gem for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I'd love to transition a little bit. I'd love to talk about steps to getting funding, right? How to actually leverage your credit to buy or build a business. And what did that even look like? Especially in our community, it's almost like we don't have the best relationship with credit, right? And if we do, it's just like, for a big example, like my grandfather, he's old school. He damn near got an 850 credit score, but I'm not sure what he's doing with it. You know what I'm saying? Like he got a
Yeah.
perfect credit score, but it's just sitting there looking pretty. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So talk to us about how we can begin to get funding. Like again, buying a business is just so far fetched for a lot of people in our community. We always are taught like, yo, you got to actually build one, but you can, buy one. So talk to us about that transition for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think to add on what you said, I mean, I think our community has just been misinformed. Like they don't have the information, and I always like to say, you don't know what you don't know, and what you don't know can hurt you. So as far as the credit, right? The first thing you need to understand is obviously you need to make on time payments, right? That's how you keep your score high. You need to have, believe it or not, you hear a lot of people say you shouldn't have too many accounts, but the fun fact, right? You need a minimum of 21 accounts to get a perfect credit score, which is 850. So it's actually the more accounts you have, and the reason why that is because it shows the lender you're able to borrow debt and pay it over the course of time, over a long period of time, right? So you're able to manage debt. And credit cards, you need credit cards and a mix of accounts with like installment loans, so like a personal loan, a mortgage loan, or auto loan. So how you would get the funding, you would make sure that your credit score is good, preferably 720 and above. And how you do that is, like I said, pay your bills on time. Don't have any late collections, no late payments, no derogatories. Make sure you have a good mix of accounts with like credit cards, personal loans, auto loans, mortgages. That helps with a good mix. And then you would just apply for either personal loans, a business loan, or like I said, now that I'm starting to get into more in the business side, like SBA loans, where they'll actually fund the rest of the down payment. So you only have to bring 10% down. So in a case you want to buy a business and you're broke, right? You can borrow money from the bank. You can go either to a local credit union or a regional bank or a national bank, and you can get a personal loan. Typically, those are a little higher interest rate, anywhere between 8 to 18%. And an installment and a personal loan is just a term loan. A term loan is you borrow 50,000, you have 5 years to pay it off. This is going to be your monthly payment, and that monthly payment is going to be fixed for the term of the loan. So if it's 5 years, and let's just say the payment is $1,000 a month, you're going to be paying that until you pay it off. That payment is never going to change. So in that example, you would go to the bank, you would borrow money, let's say 100 or 50,000, because they're just going based off your credit, right? A lot of these banks, typically, depending on the amount you borrow, they actually won't ask for documentation. They won't say like, "Oh, we need pay stubs," or "We need tax returns." It depends. Sometimes they will. So it depends on how much you ask for and how much you qualify for. So, but most of the time, you can get 20, 30, $40,000 on a personal loan without showing any documentation. They're going strictly off your credit report, and all your credit report is your resume showing them that you're able to manage debt. And it goes back to what I said before. What makes up a credit profile is having a good mix of accounts, having good payment history, and having credit cards as well, because that shows the lender that you're able to manage debt and not be, you're able to manage debt and not be able to default on those loans. So then you can just like we talked about earlier, you can, if you find a business that makes sense, you can negotiate a term where you put an X amount down, and the rest you can sell a finance with the seller at a certain interest rate that you guys negotiate. But the better route would be a SBA loan, because you can get a bigger business, a million plus business that generates a lot more money, a lot more cash flow, a lot more profit, with just 10% down, as opposed to putting, like we had to put 100,000 down for that restaurant. In hindsight, I probably would have put less down and just seller finance the rest because I borrowed it from a personal loan. It was a little bit higher interest rate compared to 4%. Does that make sense? I don't know. That was a long-winded answer, but
No, that was phenomenal. That was a lot of game right there. But I want to go back to managing like a variety of different credit cards, right? Credit accounts. Um, for the people out there, you threw out the number 21 different cards if you want to have an 850 credit score, correct?
right. You need a minimum of 21 accounts to get to the perfect 850 credit score. Minimum.
So do all 21 of those accounts need to be active? Like, I don't want people out here getting 21 accounts and they just going crazy, right? Especially during the holidays.
No,
Would
no,
you recommend?
they don't necessarily need to be active. It just needs to be like you had it at one point. It was an account that you had. But the way to build up your score would be depending on where you're at in your credit journey. Like if you have a low credit score, you can do like credit builder accounts like Self, Credit Strong. These are accounts where you put money up or you just pay a monthly fee and it's like an installment loan and that helps build up your credit. And you can start with like starter cards as far as the credit cards. Like Discover is a good one. If your credit score is low or you're starting to get credit, then you can apply for like the big banks like Chase, American Express. But yeah, it's just an overall as far as the accounts over time, right? You don't need to have 21 credit cards at the same time, right? If that's what you're asking, no.
Got you. Makes sense. And so, could you dive into how you got into the e-commerce space? I'm sure you obviously use this strategy to get into e-commerce, but for the people out there that are interested in that, how did you dive into that?
Yeah, so e-commerce is just Amazon, right? Amazon is a good everybody knows Amazon. It's just a good another source of revenue where I diversify as opposed to the restaurant, right? It is semi-passive because I hire what we call a virtual assistant to actually run my store for me. He finds the products and then we list them and then we sell them and he deals with everything from there. But I decided to get into that because it's semi-passive and it's a little bit better. It's a little bit better than having rental property. But I still like rental property because you get tax benefits from real estate. But e-commerce is good for cash flow. It's good for like semi-passive income.
Got you. So what's the next business that you are looking to jump into? I know you mentioned earlier looking to transition out of the restaurant industry, but what are you looking to get into next?
Yeah, I haven't really whatever business, all the lessons I learned from this business, it needs to have the bigger the business, the better, actually, believe it or not, because this was a local restaurant, right? So if one employee calls out, it's hard to, you know what I mean? Like I have to work it. But if it's a bigger company where like 20 employees and one or two employees call out, it's a lot easier to manage. Like we probably won't miss a beat. So I'm looking for a bigger company. And as far as what type of business, I haven't really narrowed it down. Anything that where it makes money and makes sense, but something that I can be more of a business owner, not actually in the business, where I'm more like overseeing the business. So it needs to have like a good employee structure where I don't necessarily have to be in there all the time. It's not so small where it always depends on me. It needs to be somewhere or something that has a lot of employees and I don't necessarily need to be there and has a manager in place.
Got you.
That's kind of what I'm looking for. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And we could definitely start wrapping this thing up pretty soon. A lot of great information in here. Jeremiah, feel free to hop in if you want. But, one of the questions I had was, when looking to buy a business, right, or credit, what are some different ways that you can protect yourself when you're getting into purchasing a business?
Well, the first thing you need to do is usually whoever's listing a business has like a business broker, so you can ask them questions about the business. Normally they're really helpful as far as asking questions that you normally wouldn't know or know to ask. That's how I found out about SBA. I found that through a business broker, or you could just call business brokers and you tell them you're looking for a business and they can kind of walk you through it because they get big commissions on these purchases, on these sales. So the first thing you need to know, you need to look at the tax returns. You need to verify tax returns. You need to look at profit and loss statements. You need to work the business a couple of days or see how it's going. Visit the business, see if there's foot traffic, see how the employees, again, verify why they're really selling. If it's so good, why they're selling. In this case, he was older. He just wanted to retire. So those are the things you want to look for. You want to see if there's any red flags based on that. Like if the profit and loss, like we looked at a business in Florida. We wanted to just buy a business. It didn't matter where it was. We looked at a business in Florida right during COVID, like later that year, and he sent us a profit and loss statement, and it looked photoshopped. It just looked photoshopped, and I said, something ain't right. It looked photoshopped, so it looked like, I don't know. It just looked fishy. So you want to verify all that stuff before you actually like pull the plug, and take the leap. So little things like that, you always want to ask all the questions you need to before you make a decision. How much did it make last year? Why did it decline? Why is it on a steady decline instead of, is it steady or is it going up? Things like that you want to ask.
What did you do about that situation that looks Photoshop? You just like, you were messing with it, or did you tell them like, hey, we need some verified documents? What is that? How did that happen?
Yeah, I pretty much just ignored him. I said he was dishonest.
He
He got on the phone and he told me, "Yeah, I just sent you the P&L. Let me know if you're interested." He was very desperate because this was at a time where like people were like trying to sell, and I'm like, "No, it just doesn't look. I don't know. It didn't feel right." So and then I saw that, I said, "Never mind. I'm not even gonna entertain it."
Yeah, especially when he said he's being desperate. That should be a red flag right there.
Yeah. Exactly. You always want to know why. That's the most important thing.
Dope. I love it. Could you, one last question for me, and then Jeremiah, if you had something, can you go over like some top businesses that people look to buy maybe in 2023 or 2024? Like what are like I know you said HVAC businesses and whatnot, but what are some other ones that are like pretty popular that people can see?
Yeah, plumbing is a good one from what I've researched. Plumbing is always good because it's like service-based business. Like you're always gonna need plumbing. You're always gonna need some sort of HVAC. I heard pool routes are actually great. Another thing that is very popular, I haven't looked too much into it. It's like laundromats. Laundromats are really good. There's a lot of there's not a lot of overhead because a lot of them are like self-managed. You can just go in there, put the coins, and leave. So laundromats are another thing that I'm exploring. Um, businesses like that. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but pool routes, laundromats, HVAC. They also sell like bookkeeping services. That's a good business too. Like you can actually buy like a bookkeeping service that does like bookkeeping for people in the neighborhood. Those are good businesses.
I've seen something on there with like an ATM machine route or the actual ATM, one of the two.
Yeah, you can buy routes. You can actually buy a route that is owned by FedEx. You can buy those routes. Now those are typically a lot. You can buy a logistic company, a truck company. I mean, anything you can think of, you can buy. Like if you search it on that website by keyword, if you think of anything, you search it, it'll come up. It's pretty crazy.
Why do you say service-based businesses over product-based businesses?
Because most people need a service done, and service businesses are like typically recession proof. So you're always gonna need some sort of maintenance on something, or yeah, you're always gonna need some sort of maintenance. Like if you do a whole city or town, that whole town, there's gonna be a lot of people that need maintenance over time. That makes sense?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, like repair shops too that I could think of. Those are good too.
100%. Jeremiah, did you have anything else before we get out of here? Great podcast episode though.
No, I'm good. It'll be a part two because I got a whole long list of stuff. This is Chris part one. It'll be part two.
Okay,
A whole list of things. I get into a different side of things, so
yeah, I'm all for it. Yeah, we didn't really talk about like business credit and all that. That's another thing we could talk about. That's a whole different.
Well, yeah, we definitely would love to have you on.
Yeah, that's more me. That's more my side.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
And there might be a part three based on what he's asking. I might have a question to follow up.
I'm all for it, man. I'm just, just trying to provide as much value as I can.
For sure, for sure. Well, first off, thank you. You know, typically on these shows, we want to keep it like condensed. We want to get right to it. But
Yeah.
we definitely would love to have you on for a part two before the end of the year or something like that. And we'll have like a follow up part two to this conversation. I think will be very valuable for the people out there. But for the folks out there that want to connect with you, that want to give you a follow, where can people reach out to you? And we'll link everything in the description of this podcast.
Yeah, so they can reach out to, they can just search on YouTube, Toby Rosario, TOBIROSARIO. The same thing with Instagram, full name Toby Rosario.
Well, dope. I love it. A lot of great information in this podcast episode. And like we said in the beginning, if you could share this episode with one other person, it would mean the world to us. Go ahead and give us a follow on at Latin Wealth. And, go give Toby a follow as well. And with that being said, the Latin Wealth family, we'll catch you guys next week. Peace.
Peace.